Rachel Holt for NESN.com here with Adam Rank of NFL Media. Welcome to our Fantasy Football podcast. And Adam, as always, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us.
Oh, always my pleasure. Always happy to come speak with you and everything like that. And so excited for the people of Boston and the entire New England region because it was pretty wonderful to watch Tom Brady. I mean, we saw one game back against Cleveland, which was expected. But the Bengals like to pretend that they're playoff contenders, and to watch them just dismantle that squad, it was pretty glorious.
There were some happy people around here. I make no bones about that. So we do appreciate that. First, Gronk was one guy for us who had a monster day against the Bengals. He went for 162 yards and a touchdown, so that was always great to see, in addition to the return of Tom Brady. So good stuff at Gillette over there. Odell Beckham Jr., you told us to wait for it. And this was the week where he had 2 touchdowns. He finally had that game we were all looking for. And Jay Ajayi of the Dolphins, if you saw this one coming, you were a happy guy or girl. He had a crazy day with 204 yards and 2 touchdowns. So there's just a few of the names. But for you, Adam, who had the most impressive performance in Week 6?
Well, I think we expected at some point both Gronkowski and Odell Beckham Jr. were going to break out, and we even, as you mentioned, talked about that a little bit last week. The one that seemingly came out of left field was the Jay Ajayi. A lot of people thought that he was going to have that position usurped from him by Arian Foster, but he out-touched him 26-5. He outgained him by more than 200 yards, and it was really a little bit of a shocker because not only was Ajayi not started in a lot of leagues, I think he was probably available in a lot of people's waiver wires as well when everybody went back and started searching for players this week. So that was a little bit of a shocker. He's got a tougher matchup this week, so it's going to be interesting to see if he can keep that momentum going. He's a player that I really liked coming out of Boise State. He does have a knee injury that caused him to drop to the 5th round, but that's really something that should impact him long term. But look, we're all, we're superficial, I guess, in a way with fantasy football. It's like, what can you do for me right now? So the matchup this week doesn't really mean that you should play him this week, but, and I said the word week too many times. I hate when I do that. But overall, I think long-term that he could be the number one back for them. I really don't believe in Damian Williams. And Arian Foster's a nice story, but, I mean, come on. There comes a point in your career where you're like, yeah, this isn't happening. And no fault of his own, no disrespect or anything like that. But it looks like it could be Jay Ajayi's team.
Well, the Dolphins needed some help over there, and they're not the only ones because we all need a lot of help due to a string of injuries. And first off, the place that a lot of us need help is the quarterback position. You have 2 teams on bye this week, the Carolina Panthers and the Dallas Cowboys, so we're without Cam Newton and Dak Prescott. Then Big Ben had surgery to repair a torn meniscus, and it looks like he'll be out maybe 2 to 6 weeks. So we'll touch on what that means for the Steelers in a bit. But first, what quarterback are you looking at in Week 7?
Well, I would pay attention to see if anybody drops Dak Prescott this week. Perhaps somebody is fearing that Tony Romo is going to return and take that job, or, they just don't want to carry an extra quarterback during the bye week and they feel that he's expendable. Because if you look at Dak's schedule, especially when it gets to the playoffs, it's pretty favorable and it breaks out pretty well. And if you're going to be doing a little bit of a streaming option this week, I would suggest going out and grabbing Marcus Mariota. Although he's coming off back-to-back good weeks, by the time you're hearing this, it might be too late to add him. But if he's available on your waiver wire, you might want to go out and pick him up. But the one thing I do like is a little combination with the two, because Mariota has a nice little stretch right now where he's going to be getting some great matchups. Then he has his bye week. That's when Dak could take over, although the week that Mariota goes on a bye week is also the week the Cowboys play the Vikings, so maybe you want to look for somebody else. But those 2 guys come to mind the most. I'd also like Joe Flacco, but he's battling a shoulder injury. So a super deep one, if you really need a quarterback and are desperate, I would go for Case Keenum. The Giants have allowed, they rank 11th, I should say, in pass defense. So you can pass on this team. Plus, the way that most teams kind of defense the Rams is that they are committed to slowing down Todd Gurley, and they're daring Case Keenum to beat him through the air. You saw the Lions do this last week, and even though Case Keenum had a huge game for fantasy, The Lions ended up ultimately victorious. So you can go take advantage of that game in London, which should be a high-scoring affair.
Okay, and today's game has your Chicago Bears going against the Green Bay Packers. And it might actually be a good matchup because Aaron Rodgers just really hasn't looked like himself. And there's news coming in today that Eddie Lacy will reportedly need foot surgery, so he'll be placed on IR. Certainly doesn't help Rodgers' case over there. So what do you see happening with that Packers team the rest of the season?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see who they are going to be using at the running back position. They have Don Jackson, who they promoted from their practice squad. Niall Davis was brought in via trade. Can't expect him to really do too much because there's still going to be some nuances that he needs to pick up, like blitz protection and things like that. So the guy I'm really intrigued about is Ty Montgomery. Really was a huge fan of his at Stanford, and as a matter of fact, is somebody who plays Stanford a lot with the NCAA football game by EA. God rest its soul. It was the best game. It was better than Madden, but whatever. I loved using Stanford, and Ty Montgomery was a part of that team. And when you look at a player like him, you're like, you know what? If he was playing for a really talented coach who was really nuanced, who was really creative, who was really good at getting the ball into the hands of his best players, Ty Montgomery could be a star. But unfortunately, he plays for the Packers and Mike McCarthy, who's very unimaginative, kind of like the whole Green Bay region, I guess you could say, very Wisconsin of them. So, you know what? So, while I have high hopes for him, I don't know how much we can really expect from him. But he's been a speculative ad that I've put on a bunch of my teams. I just don't really have the guts to try to start him tonight.
Okay, well, one of the guys that we'll be watching closely tonight is Cameron Meredith of the Chicago Bears. It looks like he's on the up and up over there. He's been targeted over 25 times combined in the last 2 games. Is this a guy that just continues to make things happen for Chicago?
Rachel, we talked about him a couple of weeks ago. He was our guy that we had unearthed, and the two of us, right? He's our guy. He's the Nesson podcast guy. I really like it. Once Kevin White went out, Cameron Meredith stepped in, and the targets didn't change. I mean, this offense has been designed to go after that position for whatever reason. The Bears are not looking Alshon Jeffrey's way, and it doesn't matter which quarterback it is, whether it's Hoyer or Cutler. They're just not going to Jeffrey. Now, part of it could be offensive scheme. Part of it also is the nagging Chicago Bears fan in me who realizes that when the Bears are done with one of their superstars, they're just done with them. I mean, it's happened to everybody from Matt Forte to Brandon Marshall to Urlacher to Lance Briggs, Devin Hester, Jay Cutler, he's probably gone too. I mean, they're done with that bonus section of his contract, so they'll probably get rid of him at the end of the season. It wouldn't surprise me if they make an announcement tonight that Hoyer is going to end up being the guy for the rest of the year. But they're going after Meredith a ton, and he's got a lot of potential. He's got a lot of great skills. One of the plays, I wish I could draw it up for you, but we talked about this on Fantasy and Friends yesterday, is that you see that when they run wide receiver screens for him, he's very good at getting the ball, but also breaking tackles and breaking away. And, of course, part of that is because they're playing the Indianapolis Colts, and they don't really tackle anybody. But he can break away. He's a big, strong guy. He fits that mold of the Bears receivers that they've had over the last couple of years. So he's somebody that I look at, and I'm saying this guy could be a consistent force on your fantasy team because he's going to get double-digit targets every game. He might not get 100 yards. You would hope Brian Hoyer starts throwing more touchdowns at some point, but I think that he's somebody that you can safely put on your roster each and every week, and I'm starting him tonight, as a matter of fact.
So am I, so I hope it works out for us. And if Fantasy and Friends doesn't work out for you, I think you have a future in fortune-telling. And I'm going to make a mashup of all the guys that you correctly predicted. It's been pretty impressive so far. So he was one of your guys from the get-go. One of the quarterbacks that we're also looking at is Big Ben. He creates some question marks for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Landry Jones will be their guy for the time being. So he's played in 10 games in his career. He doesn't have a lot of experience. What does this mean for guys like Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell?
Well, if you've listened to anybody, talking about the dire circumstances for the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's doom and gloom. And obviously you would want Big Ben to be playing, but I don't think that Landry Jones is that huge of a drop-off. I mean, obviously you want Big Ben to play. I cannot repeat that enough. I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm saying. But I went back and I checked out the game last year where Landry Jones started. He started and finished one game because he did make a start against Cleveland and lasted 4 attempts or one series and was out. He hurt his leg. But he played the whole game against Kansas City, and I went back and watched it. It was pretty good. He made some impressive throws. He was targeting Antonio Brown. He gave him 8 targets. He ended up with 6 receptions for 124 yards. And if you're playing in a league that allows you to that gives you the 2-point bonus, as the Lord intended, I should say, that's 14.4 points. I'll take that. It's not exactly the eye-breaking or the eye-popping totals that you're expected from Antonio Brown, but overall, that's a pretty good total that I'll take from him. Listen, if I get that every week, I'm very happy. I was impressed with the way Landry Jones was throwing the ball. His one interception actually did land in the hands of Antonio Brown. It was knocked away and batted into the air and turned into an interception. So if you're just going to look at that game tape, which is really the only thing that we can trust them on, it looks okay. Like I'm encouraged. I know it's a tough matchup this week against the Patriots. Everybody knows that Bill Belichick always likes to take away the number one option, which is weird with the Steelers because is it Le'Veon Bell? Is it Antonio Brown? My conjecture is that they're going to try everything to stop number 26. Antonio Brown can still get loose and still make some plays on the field. So I'm still comfortable with him over the next couple of weeks, and I feel that Big Ben will be back. He'll end up missing like 2 games because this is what he does. Like he has an appendectomy, and he's out playing that afternoon. It's just crazy. So he always seems to be able to rally. So I understand everybody's concern, but listen, Mike Vick isn't playing quarterback. That's what it was last year. Mike Vick was the shutdown quarterback. So stop it. He'll be fine with Landry Jones. I think it's all going to be okay.
So don't panic.
Don't panic at all. Be concerned, but don't panic.
Okay, I like it. They do have that tough matchup, as you mentioned, against the Patriots. And let's talk about them for a little bit. We are the New England Sports Network, after all. We always appreciate your insights on the Patriots. And last week we saw a big week for James White and Gronk. But one of the big question marks right now is with Julian Edelman. He's been one of Brady's favorite guys in the past. And, of course, Brady just came back 2 games ago, but Edelman is still yet to score a touchdown this season. So is this a guy that starts to get going in New England, or are there just too many targets there?
Yeah, that's the one thing. I was a little concerned when Edelman tweeted out the photo of the Freedom with the William Wallace mashup with Tom Brady's face. I'm like, hey, do you remember how that movie ended? Like, come on, pick somebody a little bit more popular or positive. But I do think that's one of the troubling things about the Patriots from a fantasy perspective, of course, because obviously if you're a fan of the team, you don't care about any of this because they just keep winning and winning. But when you're trying to set your lineup, it's frustrating because LeGarrette Blount, you see his target share come down a lot over the last couple of weeks, except he's still consistently getting into the end zone, so you're still compelled to play him. But then Julian Edelman, a targets monster, but is now sharing the wealth, so to speak. You got not only Chris Hogan in there starting to go in there and eat up a lot of the targets, but also I think the offense with Martellus Bennett just becomes so much more dynamic, and they're able to do so many more things with those 2 tight ends that can not only stretch the field, but Gronk works great underneath, and Martellus can fly down the field. He's a big dude, but he does such a great job of spreading the field that it's not going to leave a lot of targets for Edelman. So I think he's going to make big plays. He's going to make clutch touchdowns, and he's going to be great. And as a fan, you love that. But as a fantasy person, you got to start looking at other options. And if you were fortunate to pick up a player like Cameron Meredith, I would start playing him over Edelman and start to just kind of look at those matchups and realize that Edelman's great. He's a great player, but for fantasy purposes, he's going to be like a lot of the Patriots. Great to watch, not so great to have in your fantasy team.
It's tough. You know what? I stayed away from the entire Patriots offensive players. It's too much of a heartache, too much of a headache. I'm with you there. So I have to ask you, since we built you up to be this big fortune teller guy, if you had to make one bold prediction for this week, what would it be?
One bold prediction is that Jacquizz Rodgers will be a top 5 fantasy running back this week. We saw that Doug Martin still having some problems returning from his injury. So Jaquiz gets the San Francisco 49ers this week, and they're one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, which is amazing to think about because if you only saw them in week 1 going up against the LA Rams and the job that they did against Todd Gurley, you would think that this defense is pretty ferocious, but they've been rather generous to running backs over the last couple of weeks, which means Jaquiz, who Dirk Cutter absolutely loves, is going to go out and have another huge day. So I was joking. A lot of people, listen, some people just like to wade into these predictions and be like, like Jaquiz is their flex play. I'm like, nope, running back number 1. He'll be in the top 5. He'll have a great game. And when people are like, oh, who would have seen this coming? We did. Rachel and Adam saw this coming. So don't act surprised when he has this monster game.
I will take all the credit for that one. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say that as well. In terms of teams this week and matchups to look at, if you were in a Survivor League, what team would you pick to take it this week?
Yeah, I really should have paid more attention to that one because I'm out of my Survivor League because
Me too.
I'm not great. But, one of the ones that stands out to me, though, I will say this. If I was doing it still, I would just pick the Chiefs. I would assume that nobody's taken them yet. They've got a matchup against the New Orleans Saints, who just do not play well on the road. That's one that just stands out to me where it's a nice assuming that you used the Patriots a couple of weeks ago, you would want to go again, you've probably used them against the Browns, unfortunately. So, because actually this would have been a great week for the Patriots. What are they like? They never have lost to Tomlin, right? If that's maybe once that they've lost to Tomlin, and I know for a fact that Brady has 17 touchdowns and no interceptions in all the games against Tomlin, which is rather impressive. But I guess the Chiefs. My long-winded answer for a short question would just be the Chiefs.
The Chiefs.
Who do you got? Wait, where were you looking?
Well, I'm already out, so we're the perfect people to give advice to people. One game that's kind of interesting, I think, is, and I wouldn't pick them because it's a shakeup, but the Bills at the Dolphins. I don't know. LaShawn McCoy, he might not play, second leading rusher in the league. Bills' offense relies on him, and Miami, they looked good last week, so we'll see.
Yeah,
Bills on the road, what do you think?
That's an interesting one. I would suggest if anybody has LaShawn McCoy right now, go pick up Gillislee because he would be the running back who takes over. The Dolphins, if they're not the worst, I know they're competing with the Redskins and with the 49ers for worst run defense. So I would go pick up Gillislee. But that's an interesting pick, though. I like that one. I'm
predicting the upset. It's
not
courageous. An ideal pick, but it's courageous. I like to be bold. That'll be the pick. Maybe that's why I'm out of the Survivor League. But
I know. That's why we outsmarted ourselves.
We really did. All right. My final thing for you is you're, of course, on this great show, Fantasy and Friends. When can we watch it?
Oh, thank you so much for mentioning that. I would ask everybody within the sound of my voice to go set your DVRs. Go to channel 212 or whatever your cable station is for NFL Network. Record our show. It'll be on 6 o'clock on Friday afternoon. Well, it is afternoon, but I don't know if that also counts as evening. I don't know. I don't know what the vernacular is for that. Record it, and then after you're done watching all the great programming on NESN, or you got a Bruins game going on or something, if you want to watch, there won't be any baseball on Friday, unfortunately, because the Dodgers and Cubs play today, and the Indians already sewed that up. So later on that evening, you're like, I'm going to go check out this Fantasy and Friends show, and you'll go watch it, and hopefully you will enjoy it. We won't have MJD on Friday, so if that's the first time that you watch it, realize that MJD will be back. But I still think it'll be fun, and if you want to watch it live at 6 o'clock, I won't argue with you, and I would even ask that you give a chance and try to call in, 888-55-FRIENDS, and see if you can get in and get a question, and then give Rachel a shout-out.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Right?
You know what I love about you, Adam, is we can ask you any question, and you're just a wealth of knowledge, and we just have all of our Friday programming needs solved with one swift answer. So, as always, great to talk to you and hear your advice, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.
All right, thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it. Good luck to you in your leagues this week, and look forward to the next time.